Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Apsley and today I'm going to be working on a painting of this hibiscus. So I've got a nice flower on this very small little plant that I was able to bring in a pot into my studio so I can paint it from life. And the flowers only really last for a day, so I'm going to try to work on a quicker painting of just the flower mainly. And we'll see how that goes, so let's get started. So the first step for me to do a painting of this is to draw it. And I need to decide what angle I'm going to do, whether I'm going to paint it straight on or at like a 3/4 view, and just really look at it and do some sketching. Okay, so I've gone ahead and mapped out my basic pinwheel hibiscus shape here. Got the 5 petals and the style in the middle, and I'm doing it at this slight angle off center so that the style isn't coming straight at us. It's a bit more interesting that way. So now I just need to continue to refine this drawing. Okay, so now that I'm pretty happy with this drawing, and before I start any of my actual painting, I'm going to take my masking fluid, which is a rubbery liquid, and I want to protect the style, stigma, and stamen in the center of the flower here so that I can keep that clean while I do all the washes of pink behind it. So what that looks like is it's just this liquid rubber, and I use a nib applicator. Just like not quite a brush, it's just a little nib. And I'm going to paint that on carefully. And then I'm going to do a bunch of little dots for the stamens where the pollen is. Now while we wait for that masking fluid to dry, we can start talking about color. So I have all my tubes here, and I'm looking at the color of this flower, and I have a couple of pigments that come to mind that might work well for this. So the first is called Opera Rose. This is a really vibrant pigment that I don't use all that often. It's not as light fast as some of the other pigments, but it's incredibly vibrant, and I think for the almost fluorescent color that we have in the petals of this hibiscus, it's going to work really well. And then the other color that mixes well with that is actually an orange. It's called transparent orange, and that will really warm up the cooler tones of the Opera Rose. Apologies for my dirty palette. I don't wash it very often. I don't like to waste paint, so I just leave a lot of color in the palette, and then that gets incorporated into my future color mixes. So if I take the transparent orange here and the Opera Rose, start mixing them together, we get that sort of fluorescent peachy color that is exactly what we want for this hibiscus. And I have a block of paper here to test on. You can see the orange on the left, the Opera Rose tone on the right, and then the mixture in the middle. Let's check it against the reference. And I think that color will work really well. You can see there's a lot of variation in those petals, from a warmer oranger tone to the very light, bright pink. And we can capture a bit of both of those by blending those colors together. So this is one of the rare times that I'm going to use a wet on wet wash technique. And what that entails is adding water to the page and then painting into an already wet paper. So let's do one petal at a time, and I'm going to go ahead and apply some clean water starting from the outside and going in. And I'm noticing this really beautiful white veining that radiates from the center of the flower. So I want to preserve that white and capture that veining right away in the wash stage. It's a little difficult to see, but basically I'm applying a lot more water on the outside and then thin lines of water where I want my pink to be towards the center. Now I'm going to take my pink color and apply it to the same area. I'm going to try to keep it pretty light at first. And since the paper's already wet, it helps me blend this wash from the outside in. And you don't want to overwork wet paper or a wash that's partially dry, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. Move on to the other petals. I'm going to skip one so that I don't risk putting a wet wash next to something that's trying to dry and having it bleed. I'm going to go to this petal here and do the same thing. Now one thing I'm doing a little bit is lifting with my brush just to bring in some of that streaky texture. So that involves just pulling the paint out of my brush, and the water rather, so that my brush is very dry, and then basically painting in reverse and using the brush as a sponge. So I'm alternating between adding more paint and then pulling back the paint. And finally we can do the last petal over top of the masking fluid. Just want to make sure that your masking fluid is completely dry. Okay, I took a short break and these washes are completely dry now. I'm going to go ahead and erase these pencil lines before I add any more paint. Now I'm going to go in with my same color, and instead of painting wet on wet, I'm going to paint wet on dry. And not much darker, but I want to get more of those striations and lines in the petals. So I'm going to paint the same direction from the outside in. And of course, since the paper is dry now, instead of getting that really soft wash texture, I have much more control over the paint, and I can do a more textured, linear brush strokes. I try to do most of my painting on drier paper like this, just because it gives me a lot more control over exactly where the paint goes. I always find it a lot more comfortable to rotate the painting around for something like this so that my hand is moving in a natural position rather than trying to bend my hand or wrist in a way that doesn't feel natural. You can get much more consistent brush strokes if you keep your hand in a comfortable position. I'm going to mix up a deeper red with a bit of quinacridone rose and go ahead and do a light layer of paint on the center of the flower. So we've got a nice base layer of paint on the flower, but we want it to look a lot more three-dimensional. So I'm going to mix up a variation on our first color, which I'm going to substitute cobalt violet for the opera rose, and then mix in a little bit of that transparent orange to warm it up. And this is going to be our shadow tone. So in the areas where the petals overlap a little bit, you can start to bring in a little bit of that color. And then I'm also going to use this color very selectively to create the tiny folds and waves in the petal itself. It's always good to start out very light with your washes and your colors in watercolor, but now that we have a nice first couple layers established, we can go much bolder with the color. So I just did a more saturated loose wash over basically the whole painting. It ended up being a little sloppier than I intended. Now that things are dry, we just need to go back in and bring out some more of that detail. And we can go much darker in the center now. And we just need a lot more detail and contrast in these petals. Now I really want to try to emphasize that center pattern of white veins that kind of splashes out from the center of the flower. So I can make those white veins pop by deepening the contrast with the pink around them. I'm really pushing the center much darker here using a bit of violet, because most red pigments just won't get that dark in the mass tone, which is simply the darkest that the pigment will go straight out of the tube. Now, one technique I like to use is just take a bit of water and do a wash over top my brush strokes to even things out a bit. This can obliterate your detail if you're not careful, so you don't want to go over very fine details, but it can also help to unify things and make your painting come together. Now my masking fluid's been on here this whole time, so I'm going to go ahead and use this piece of rubber to remove it. So you can see where that gives me a clean white area to add all the yellow details of this part of the flower with an even pink wash behind it and around it. The style really fades from yellow near the end to red at the base. So I'm going to paint some yellow here and then continue up my red and then blend them where they meet with some water. And I just need to paint the details of the stamen and the stigma. Just doing layered dots of yellow and a darker brown combined with the white of the paper creates the depth of these little clusters of pollen. I don't want to focus a lot on the leaves in this video, but I'll show quickly that I'm going to start with a wash of cerulean blue. This will help me capture the shininess of the leaf texture, since the blue makes them look reflective. And then I'll do darker green subsequent layers. And now a darker green for the leaves. This really contrasts nicely with that light pink of the flowers. Now finally I'm using a liner brush to bring back some of these fine veins within the flower. So one of the limitations of live reference is that it is, well, live. It's getting later on in the day and this flower is, I've noticed this flower is starting to close up a little bit. So while there's a bit more detail I could add, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. And also, since I've just been staring at the same painting for several hours now, it also doesn't hurt to take a break. This plant will have a new flower on it tomorrow, and I can come back with fresh eyes and add more detail and look at it again. So I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe.